Tousaw is a lawyer with Kirk Tousaw Law. He's the founder of Beyond Prohibition, and he's on the board of directors of sensiblebc. He's also, over the last few years, won successful constitutional challenges against Health Canada and defending the Vancouver Island Compassion Society and the Cannabis Buyers Club of Canada. So if you have access to medical cannabis in Victoria, got Kirk largely to thank for it. If you'll help me welcome Mr. Kirk Tousaw.
Thanks very much, and thanks to Dana for putting on this event, and thanks to everybody that came out today. I'm not so sure I can claim much credit for access to medical cannabis in Victoria. I think the clients I represent do a great job of providing that access, but I've been really privileged and fortunate and honored to be able to work with them in defending that right in the courts, and so I've really been honored to be a part of that struggle. I come at this issue really from two perspectives. The first is my professional capacity. I'm a lawyer. Don't boo. I work almost exclusively with people charged with violating various marijuana laws of this country. Probably 95% of my practice involves defending either cannabis consumers, cannabis distributors, cannabis producers, or people having issues with the compliance scheme put into place by Health Canada for medical marijuana purposes. And so I come at this from that perspective in the sense that I really get to see firsthand the devastation that cannabis prohibition wreaks on individual lives. It is a policy, particularly the ban on simple possession of cannabis, which is what the Sensible Policing Act is taking aim at. It's really a policy that does no good and does a tremendous amount of harm to the individual lives of people. And I come at it because I often joke that nobody ever calls me when they're having a good day, but my phone will ring, and almost invariably, if someone's calling me and they're having a very, very bad day, and they're having a bad day because they've come into contact with law enforcement authorities as a result of either their cannabis possession, their cannabis sales, or their production of cannabis. And these are good people. I've got to tell you, despite the fact that I know on a macro level there's a significant amount of involvement of organized crime in the marijuana industry in this province and internationally, somewhere in the neighborhood of 90 to 95% of the people that I've represented now in 6 years of doing this in Canada have no involvement whatsoever with organized crime. I mean, none whatsoever. They are normal, good, honest, hardworking people trying to make a living, trying to do the best they can. Some of them love the plant, some of them love to make money, some of them love both. Some of them can't make money even though they love the plant. I mean, but it's really a huge segment of society, but they're good people. They're the kind of, it's one of the reasons I tell people I like to do this kind of work, because I get to help people that I'd invite to my house and have invited to my house to have dinner with my family. And they become victims through no consequence of their own. They become victims of a bad law, an unjust law, an unjust policy that we've heard, I think very eloquently, promotes a culture of disrespect for the rule of law, disrespect for the institutions of society, disrespect for law enforcement, and that has all kinds of ramifications. So when I talk about the Sensible Policing Act, we talk about simple possession of cannabis. And why do we talk about simple possession of cannabis? Well, that's what we can achieve in British Columbia with a provincial referendum. It's a goal that we can achieve. It also happens to be, I think, a goal that is supported by virtually everyone in the province. It's very, very hard to find people who think that you should be saddled with a criminal record for the rest of your life as a result of being arrested for simply possessing cannabis for your own personal use. What I've heard occasionally in opposition to that is, well, we don't put anyone in jail for simple possession of marijuana here in British Columbia. Well, that's great. We don't lock adult human beings in steel cages at the point of a gun because they choose to put a particular plant into their system. I mean, I don't find that to be a laudable statement of human civilization to this point in time in this society. Statement. I mean, we have evolved a little bit. We don't lock people in steel cages for simple possession of marijuana, unless they happen to be on parole and they violated their parole by possessing it, unless they happen to be on bail conditions and they violated the bail by possessing it, unless they happen to have some previous criminality and this is a reason to teach them a lesson. So by and large, we don't jail people for it. But those aren't the main consequences to people charged with simple possession of cannabis. They just aren't. The calls that I get from people that are charged with simple possession, and I do get them. I've represented people as young as 16 years old and as old as in their mid-50s for being arrested and charged with simple possession. We're not talking about pleading down a trafficking offense. We're not talking about a close call. We're talking about a couple of grams of cannabis, a couple of joints of cannabis in their possession. They're charged with a violation of Section 4 of the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, which prohibits simple possession. And they're preceded by way of summary conviction. And their first question typically isn't, am I going to jail? Although I have heard that, and I've had to reassure some people that no, most decidedly you're not going to jail. But I get the kinds of questions that occur when you see a whole future laid out in front of you, which is completely different from the future that you thought you were going to have before you ran into law enforcement as a result of your possession of cannabis. There are questions like, if this gets in the newspaper, my wife who's a teacher at the local school is going to lose her job. Are my kids going to be taken away from me? Is the Ministry of Child and Family Services going to be called? Am I going to be able to visit my aunt and uncle in the United States ever again? And the answers to those questions, unfortunately, are, if it gets in the newspaper and you're in a sensitive position in your community or a small community, you might have social problems. You might have employment problems. If you go to the border and they know you've been arrested for this offense or convicted of this offense, you may well be turned down permanently from entering the United States. You may lose your job. These things do happen to people, and they happen as a consequence of this. And it particularly happens to young people. This is really the tragedy of the law prohibiting simple possession of cannabis. A guy like me, white guy, somewhere north of 40, can speak not that far north. They can speak relatively coherently at times. That doesn't get intimidated easily in the presence of law enforcement. If I'm stopped as I leave here and I have a small amount of cannabis in my possession unlawfully, it's very unlikely that I'm going to be charged with a crime. They're just not going to do it. It just doesn't happen that way. But if I'm myself at 17 with hair down to here and a jean jacket with the Kennedy symbol on the back, and combat boots and ripped up jeans, yeah, I'm getting that ticket and I am catching that charge. And it's really unfortunate because the consequences to the 17-year-old are so much more severe, potentially, than the consequences of the 42, 43, 44, 54. Get me going, I might tell you more secrets. That's the tragedy of cannabis prohibition. It really impacts people's futures. And it really, really impacts the choices that your life can unfold in front of you. And it can rob you of so many choices at a very young age. And I hear those calls, and I get those questions. And I do my best to help people navigate the minefield that comes with exposure to the criminal justice system. It's a very scary thing. If you've never been exposed to it, I hope you never are exposed to it, either as a direct participant, as somebody who loves somebody that's participating in it, that's been victimized by it. It's an absolutely terrible experience to go through. So I come at it from a professional perspective in that sense. But I come at it from a personal perspective as well. I'm a father of 4. My eldest daughter, Kaya, is 12 years old now. She is in middle school. She's approaching the age that statistically the onset of first use of cannabis is going to become a real and present possibility. I think she's armed with more information than probably most 12-year-olds are, having been sort of in this battle to end prohibition for all of her life, and a great friend of mine. But I see the potential consequences that can flow to her if she makes the choice to consume cannabis. And those consequences can be severe, not because of the use of the substance. Those consequences are relatively minor. They may even be beneficial. But the consequences that result from a criminal justice system that victimizes people every day here in British Columbia as a result of bad policies and unjust laws. And so as a parent, I don't ever want to see any child go through the horror that is an arrest, a prosecution, standing in a courtroom, feeling like you've lost control of the future, really of the possibilities that your life can unfold in front of you. So for me, it's a professional and it's a very personal issue. And I'm really honored to have worked with Dana so hard on putting together the Sensible Policing Act. It's been a long work crafting this legislation. We've had to navigate several hurdles. We've gone back and forth to Elections BC a number of times. But we think we've come up with a piece of legislation that really, as I think Nicholas said, oughtn't be very controversial at all. I mean, really, the province ought to probably be doing this on its own without the need for a referendum, and they can. And if everyone in this room takes 10 people with them to their MLA's office and urges them to do this before we have the referendum, well then maybe we don't need to raise up an army of volunteers and collect 400,000 signatures in 90 days, and 10% of the eligible voters in every riding in the province. It's a Herculean effort. Maybe we could just convince 83 people that the law here in British Columbia needs to change, and then we can carry that forward. I thought His Worship, I like using that term, I thought His Worship made probably the most cogent argument against cannabis prohibition that I've ever heard that didn't actually use the word cannabis in the argument a single time. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And I thought what he said really, it resonated with me because of the work I do. It resonated with me because I'm a participant in the criminal justice system, because in sentencing decisions, I'm often tasked with trying to convince a judge not to harshly punish a client for a cannabis offense. This particularly arises in medical cannabis cases, not to harshly punish an accused person because they showed a flagrant disrespect of the law. You know, that's one of the principles, the purposes of sentences in Canada is to deter, specifically deter the offender, engage in general deterrence. I mean, anybody that's traced the history of drug prohibition, cannabis use knows that in the context of drug offenses, the idea that deterrence is actually an effective piece of sentencing is just ludicrous. That doesn't work. I mean, we see countries where they kill people, literally kill people for drug offenses, and yet people still break that law. So the idea that any period of incarceration is going to have some sort of greater effect, I think, is absurd. But one of the things I hear often as well, your client showed a flagrant disregard for the rule of law, and if I don't harshly punish your client, Mr. Tousaw, aren't I sending a message to the rest of society that you can pick and choose the laws that you want to obey, and aren't we contributing to a general disrespect for law by members of the public, and aren't we bringing really the administration of justice into disrepute? And my answer to that is no, absolutely not. Not in sentencing in this courtroom. Yes, the administration of justice is in disrepute in this country. Yes, there is a flagrant disregard for this law, but the answer is not to lock up an individual offender, or 2 or 3, or group criminal records to 100 or 3,500 or 30,000 or 300,000. The answer is to enact laws that people obey because the laws make sense to obey. And unfortunately, we haven't done that when it comes to drug policy. And so, as I say, I'm absolutely honored and privileged to be here in front of you today. I hope we have a vibrant discussion. I urge everyone and this is really, really important, please get involved with Sensible BC, sign up on the volunteer sheet, go to the website, tell people about it, because come about 9 months, 10 months from now, we are going to need people in every riding in this province. Every riding in this province, we need people on the ground collecting signatures so that we can overcome the hurdles put in place by the Electoral Recall Act, and we can get this on the ballot, and we can let British Columbians speak loud and clearly and say, stop busting people for simple possession of cannabis in this province, and that way we can lead by example the rest of Canada into a new era.